Hmm. Oh, exactly where they said you would be. It's time to find you, you know. Hmm. Never would have been able to find someone like you. Luckily, I recently devoured one of the divine. And they were able to find you through a recent pair of eyes. I will say, it's quite shocking that I keep finding people of your line. Really, it would almost seem like I'm targeting you. Well, well, I do hold a grudge. It's, uh, I swear it's mostly a coincidence. I suppose that they would have a stronger connection towards those from the same god. Though, hmm. Oh, I thought I was talking to divine servant, somebody who was trying to mess up my plans or something. But no, no, you're one of the fallen, a recent one. I have not seen one of you fall in millennia. My, and one from the mighty spawn of Morning Star. I thought your line ended long ago. I think it's like in the last two or three eras, I think technically now. Uh, suppose one of you stayed. Oh, come now. There's nothing wrong with falling. You do come from a mighty line, almost as precious as myself. uh, Pardon? Wait, you don't know who I am? Um, hmm, Kane. Ring a bell? Oh, huh. Pandora? Oh, that rings a bell. Well, that name I did choose for myself, and do quite a big, kerfuffle with that one. I'm sure that they would still complain about it, though, this many times. Hmm. Interesting. Yet they still hold a grudge about that. Or maybe a boon for judgment. Hmm. Let me ask you, little one, for what reason did you fall? Hmm. Well, I could take you to somebody else to figure out what the reasons are if you're not going to talk. But I do want to give you a chance to speak. Oh, now that is interesting. Oh, it's just rare to see one of you suddenly grow a conscience. Were you on easier missions before? Oh, come now. You, well, recently were just getting rid of demons for being demons. Hmm. Original sin, okay, sure. Hmm. But you draw the line as somebody being born in poverty. A human or beast? Which one was it? Was it another race or was it human? Of course it was a human. Must have been a human to go over and get some type of sympathy from you. Oh, nothing. Just prejudice is all. So, a young orphan was stealing from a manor for a little while to go over and feed themselves, and after being caught, a devout lord wanted you to end them. And instead, even if though they had caused such crimes of stealing, you couldn't blame them due to their circumstances and having no way out of it other than stealing. And for that, you fall. Interesting. Do you know where the child is? What? I am not all-knowing. I'm intelligent, but I'm not able to know everything. Tell me, My condolences that a child was strung up at the gate. Um, I would not be able to understand. Oh, of course, if you had just done a small judgment on them, perhaps losing a hand and it being cauterized, they would still be alive, wouldn't they? I understand that they would blame. But did you know that'd be the consequence? Should have been able to guess it. Did he even tell you? No, of course not. You must be still pretty young by their terms. When were you born, if you don't mind me asking? Do you know any era before magic became main? By that look, no. You were born after the calamity. There must have been still some loyal to you. Alright. Then I have a tale to tell you, child. Would you care to listen? Ironically, I have something for the situation. A way to keep you on this plane for a little longer before you fall into somewhere deeper. An apple. Do you wish to take a bite? Then I shall offer you knowledge. Long, long ago, there were two people that were thrown out of paradise. After being thrown from paradise, they still tried to live devout and kind lives, and they had child. Two. Though I believe my mother would have another later. I don't quite recall, but I know there was us two. We were separated for a time, and we grew. Cain and Abel, beside each other all the time, there to help each other. And as boys do. Yes, I used to be a boy. And much before this form, honestly. Took a while to get used to and to not be ashamed of it. So my mother would be quite proud to have a daughter. Everything else aside, at least. But anyway, I guess to go back, we did many boyish things together as we grew up. Throwing rocks, having loads of fights, and other things of the sort. Little competitions between us were quite common. When we grew older, we still lived near each other to support one another. And we continued our competitions, though now we had a referee. It was Judgment. Though back then he called himself God, unknown to both of us. He had either run or won a raffle, and as such, out of the 28, only he was to be the one to lead creation for a little while on a little place. So for us, we called him God. We would have a competition as we were older to get a better sacrifice for him. I always had a green thumb. Part of the reason I do enjoy my new hair, as much as it's difficult to maintain. And my brother was a lot better with animals. He raised them, and I would go to the greenery and gardens and, with utmost care, find different types of vegetables and different plants exalted to make different spices and such. And our competition was to go over and create something worthy to sacrifice towards our grandfather, God. So, we did that for a while, quite a while. And eventually, two things would happen. I would always lose. And my brother, though kind-heartedly I understand now at the time, would gloat. And somewhat criticize me. After all, I must not be putting in that much effort if he's always winning. Though he put in his own fair share, I must have been slacking or something else at the time that he wasn't seeing me if I couldn't win even once. So I went to God, and I asked him, for what reason is my sacrifices unworthy of a victory? And our grandfather told me it's for a simple reason. So simple. That my brother's sacrifice was just inherently more. He obviously cared more for his creatures that he raised, and as such, well, since he was sacrificing a living thing that he obviously cared for more, his sacrifice was greater. Therefore, he would always win. There was no possible way for me to win our competition. I had no hand in raising cattle or anything of the sort, nor was I comfortable, unlike my brother, in sacrificing them. So, even with the new reason, my brother, I'm sure in his eyes good-heartedly was gloating. That, inherently, his profession was better than mine. After all, it had our grandfather's approval, while mine did not. So, as we were boys, I decided that while I could not argue against my grandfather, for he was even back then, Lord of Judgment, there was no way that his judgment could be faulty or wrong in any way, or personal preference. He must be inherently right. But for my brother to rub it in like that, he needed to be taught a lesson. So, I decided to do what we did when we were boys. We threw little rocks at each other for whenever we made a small mistake. It was a larger mistake, then obviously it desired a larger rock. That seemed to fit in my head at the time. So, I threw it at my brother. And he fell, the same way he used to. But what changed was, he never got back up. Unbeknownst to me, I had become the first murderer. The first sinner on earth. Not in paradise. And I was given a mark. My grandfather, being ever so gracious, made sure that I couldn't die for my mistake. After all, I knew no better, but I still needed to be punished for the action, even though I obviously had no way of knowing, for no one had told us of death. It wasn't even a possibility we were aware of. So, others were not allowed to harm me due to the mark from my grandfather, and I lived in shame and guilt. But I tried to live, at least for a little while, to repent. And as I made my house, unknown to me, a big rock would fall on me. But, unbeknownst to my grandfather, the mark would work even on him. I could not be killed. So, I came back. And I came back in a body that was not longer mine. Not something muscular, but something more dainty, feminine. And I thought the rock wasn't enough for it. It was a hallucination. So I threw the rock at myself set it up, and I let it fall on me again, and again, and again, and again, until, eventually, the rock broke on my head. It seemed to make my mark actually workable. The more times I died a certain way, the harder I would become to die, or be killed in that manner. Of course, it was only specific to that exact way, in general resistances towards other things. I believe, to my understanding, I had a high resistance to the rock falling on that specific place on my head, but I could still have my arm broken by a rock, or anything else of the sort, though I was more resistant than a person should be to such things. Then, problems started. I started exploring the world and seeing what it had to offer. Many problems arose by the time I stepped out, due to me being in this body, but I managed. After all, I was the first murderer, and as long as I died, I got better at killing. I dealt with the issues as they came up. Eventually, I grew bored, and I would find a different way to end myself till something more interesting came in my vision again. I continued this pattern for quite some time, till a certain incident. But, suffice to say, I grew with humanity through the Bronze Age to the age where certain noticeable legends came back up. By my own design, actually. For you see, there was some type of box, or a seal. It was a seal. That was basically holding in mana for the world, the final little bits of creation. And, well, out of spite, I decided to grab a mining tool and destroy those carvings, resulting in the age of monsters. Yes, I opened that box prematurely. As such, Judgment was able to be the only god for quite a while longer than planned. And, well, different monsters and mystical beings would arise from the world. After a certain incident where let a monster take control of my body and ravage the world for quite some time, my death from there would lead towards seeing a world that was so radically different than here. Without the godlings suppressing them, humanity had thrived in becoming something extraordinary. Still evil in a lot of ways, and still spreading different types of problems, but the technology had become to the level that we would call magic. Things that even we can't do today, they were able to achieve rapidly in the 2000th century. And while there would be different type of issues that would crop up from their own mishandling, if they had mana along with everything else, oh, the problems they could solve. I eagerly look forward to the day that mana would be back in the world. Unbeknownst to me, the gods had changed things. Because you see, they had been inspired by this pesky little concept that humanity had came up with that they had never seen before. Democracy. One may have a hard time understanding how that would be a shackle on mankind. But you see, the gods had decided that instead of having one ruler, they would all, 28, rule the world. And they would come to a vote. As long as a majority voted for something, it would be done. And if something didn't get majority votes, it just simply wouldn't happen. Simple system, but something that everyone could agree with, especially in case they made concessions towards other gods to make their plans come to fruition. And so, the world was radically changed on the day of calamity. The world broke again. Very few survived. And most that did would never notice a thing and would become future heroes for the world to pluck out whenever they wished it to. There are still thousands left, I believe, that they can select from. People who are naive, people who are socially isolated, people who wish to be a hero and save the world, those who genuinely believed in isekai of different fantasies. And so, with their game set up, I thought at the time, trying to justify it, seeing humanity praise him and these others, I didn't assume they were evil. Not at first. So I travelled, thinking that it was just a necessary process for mana after I had failed it. It would take me quite a long time to learn that wasn't the case. I thought it was just a blowback from me opening Pandora's box early. So I understand blaming yourself for something you can't see. Well, twice fold, honestly. But, after the day of calamity, I saw how the world was not fair in a way that you simply can't, child. Of course, you are blinded by dogma. All races were born in the same vein as humanity. They were all equally as good or bad as everything else. After all, the humans from today are different than the humans that were made before, like myself or any hero. Hence, why every hero is so strong, as well as myself. Our bodies are built differently, and with no exposure to mana, well, the threshold that we can hold mana is higher, increasing our strength. But I would explore these new races, see them develop and grow, and it was fascinating. I was one of the first people to go over and travel to every group. I also met the first demon that came out. True demon, to be clear, not a fallen like yourself, twisted into a form that back then they called demons. A true, otherworldly creature. Many eyes on that one, many eyes. But then I saw rattlings of war. Stable rattlings again. And I was curious to why. And I decided, as a new start, that I would try and change this world to be better. I didn't want to be unengaged like the last one. So I tried to help things, and I noticed who was pushing people towards doing these things. It was the gods. So I went to kill them. And then suddenly I was struck down. It was their plan to start war. At the time, I didn't understand why. It would take me a while to understand that now that they could all play, they had a grand game they wished to enact. And certain rules had been set up from the very start, and other ones added on later, such as the fact that, well, one group had to always set up a race war every few hundred years or so, and the fact that demons, while allowed to stay, could never be true citizens and get the rest of the protections the gods had for all their others, though they were useful pawns, so preliminary, there wasn't any grand actions on against them, at least recently, when I got, well, them under my control. The ones who created this unnecessary filth, these problems that could be solved by just having a little bit more mana, these aren't natural problems that just regularly occur. They're natural problems because the world is set up the way it is. something that could easily be changed by just a single rule change here or there. Prejudices spread out by the priests, race wars set up by them, the fact there isn't enough food for all of us. Again, the priests making sure that there's not enough people working in agriculture with mana enough. They must be druids or other things that protect the forests and indoctrinate into such beliefs, instead of, well, making sure the forest is both protected and given the skills to make sure there's more fruit. Something that can easily be done, but is stopped at every turn from being widespread. Seeing such things, I decided to go differently than you. Same. Though, I suppose the only big difference was that I did it on a grander scale. I rebelled. I changed things. And each and every time, I was shot down, destroyed. Do you know why that's the case? What rules allowed it for you to be punished as well? Easy. The divine are not allowed to directly intervene. I know. It's stupid. They have their workarounds. The easy one is that they can't directly go over and tell people to create a race war. They could do that, but their own rules set them back. At least for now. They can revoke them at any point in time, but as long as the game can still be played, they'll hold on to those rules by the majority. Those rules limit them as much as it limits what I, and you, my friend, can do. Instead of just going over and saying, oh yes, fight all these people because they're evil, they can imply that they're lesser by omission. Saying perhaps, oh, praise be to the elves, humans, dwarves, and all the fair people, and all their fair people, something along those lines, intentionally leaving out orcs, ogres, and other type of races. Now, of course, you're not saying that they're lesser, but you're evoking them from the blessing, and that's going to give your followers thoughts, right? And as long as the person's quiet, well, they're just answering questions later. All they gotta do is just answer questions about where the congregations are, where the main people are, because people are just genuinely in the hearts of hearts asking these questions. And then, somehow, their places start burning. Well, it's not the gods' fault that they just answer these questions in good faith, right? Omission and giving partial information, and good information, underneath the guise of just helpfully asking or answering questions. That is how they manipulate things. Not direct actions like me or you trying to change things. Hence how we get punished by these unseen rules that we can't naturally, intuitively understand. My understanding comes from seeing how they act through the eons, and even then, I'm sure there are gaps inside my knowledge, though each time that I raise an attempt, I learn more. You have done nothing wrong, child, in defending them. There was no way that you could have known that they would have been punished in that way. Oh, for shame. No, you were not told, the same way that I wasn't told that my brother would die. I am not responsible for that action if I do not know the consequence. The same way that you should not be punished if you do not simply know the rules. Reprimanded, certainly, but punished, not so much. Unfortunately, I've only more recently figured out the full totality of how most of the rules work. But they can be used. After all, you see that at least that one human was like that. You understand there were other humans like that, correct? Mm-hmm. And with time, I hope that I can help you understand that it's not just humans that deserve such things. I'm sure you can tell that I speak truth in saying they all have a similar origin. They all come from the same mana, The only one who doesn't is those that came out from, well, the waste of everything. The yin to the yang and all that. Demons. Oh, I'll explain that concept to you later. Just think of it as, I guess, they are the shadow to everything else there. And just to explain it simply, they could not exist if there wasn't something else to shine off them. Anyway, I wish to teach you that even them, these demons, can have good in them. Though most of them were quite corrupted by an intentionally set up bad system, which is why I was comfortable using them. And you still thought fine to punish these demons, to my understanding? And other orcs, beastmen, and such. Of course, it was only seeing a creature that was similar to you. I'm wondering in case you'd have the same realization if it was an elf. And for that, you aren't perfectly clear either. You see, I fought first on this place. Lovely little dragon, the first dragon. And while we fought hard, we were struck down by combined might of many other places. The first calamity, they called us. Oh, how wrong they were. And from there, I decided that I will not be using good folk, good, honest, pure folk, to die with me. They must make at least one mistake, one sin. And through helping me, may they, as I more recently have found out, may they be redeemed. Well, my latest project has been having a lot more recovery. They are, in actuality, talking towards others now. Not much, still being very standoffish, but they are at least conversing a lot with the vigilante. And a lot with the necromancer, too. The necromancer was actually able to give them peace that I wasn't available to me to give, by saying their final goodbyes towards the other heroes. And, well, they noticed that perhaps the sky was a little bit more blue on that evening than normal, which may have led towards something happening. So, I ask of you, now that you have taken the fruit of knowledge, will you join me in getting rid of the vile filth of this world that's allowed to fester for the gods' entertainment? After all, by indirectly using you as my pawns, I may do the same game the gods always did. Oh, what will happen when the gloves come off? Then I'm allowed to fight. After all, rules serve multiple purposes. It strengthens their power. And if all of them can, well, on their first round, barely have enough to win against me now, with some competent helpers, well, let's just say that that shall be the first time that a god may fall. Oh, how I look forward to taking my grandfather's head. So, will you join me in this crusade against all that is wrong in this world? Well, thank you. We'll come up with something new for you. But with those wings, O child of morning star, how would you like to be called? Raven. Oh, mighty Raven, I look forward to working with you.